Hello, and welcome to your daily dose of truth to hear. Today's program is Truth Talk, a Conversation. With everything going on today, with a new administration in the White House, President Biden's executive orders that are affecting people in real time every day, there was so much uncertainty between what's going to happen with new COVID restrictions. They're talking 2022 now before we get back to our normal life. What is that about? Well, joining us today is an award-winning journalist and author of Plan for America and the World. His name is Brian Gardner. Welcome, Brian. How are you?
Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I cannot wait to have this conversation and allow our viewers to understand that we have power and the government is working for us. And so before we get into the depths of all your subtopics that are in your book, we have a couple things in common. Did you know we have three things in common?
What, same zodiac sign?
I don't think so. I don't know when you were born, so that can't be it.
I'm
in June, so no, okay. That's not going to work. No, we have the fact that we're both Star Trek fans.
Yes.
My husband and I, we lived on Trekkies. Talk about weekend vegging on the original Star Trek. But we also both, you're a bronze communicator in Toastmaster.
Yes.
And I just started my journey with Toastmasters.
Great.
So that's an amazing organization. One day we might have to talk about that alone.
Yeah.
And then the final thing that we have in common is you are a member of the Church of Scientology.
Yes.
And I worked with them and for years with my talent agency. We did a lot of stuff through talent through the one here in Hollywood. So we're strangers, but not really strangers.
Right.
Well, let me just introduce a little bit about your life. You were born in California.
Yes.
You now reside in Las Vegas, Nevada. You love auto racing, as we can tell. You love cars with your Hot Wheels collection. It's an amazing collection. But you also are a musician.
Yes.
And have done over 300 one-man performances of music and comedy variety shows, right?
At retirement homes, yes, before COVID hit, because now it'd be, I don't mind telling people, I turned 69 in March, so it would be very dangerous for me to go back into retirement homes to perform there. And I will tell you something which will be helpful for your viewers. I was passing out maracas to all the residents and they got to play with me. I would pick up the maracas, put them in a box, jump in my car. Oh, I want to have something to eat. Not wash my hands after touching all those maracas. I had to go to the doctor. I had pneumonia in my left lung. I told the doctor what I did. He goes, I can tell you for sure that's where you picked it up.
Wow.
And then after that, I was very careful to wipe down the maracas as I put them away, wash my hands. But to go back into a retirement home today would be very dangerous for me. So that part of my life is kind of over. And after all, I have done over 300 performances there. So I gave a lot of people a lot of joy. And I'm moving on from that activity into other activities.
And that brings me to the point where you are now going on the interview circuit for your book, A Plan for America and the World. How did you get into music and comedy variety shows, doing shows for retirement communities, to now speaking about empowering the people?
Well, I've already told you why I'm not going back to the retirement homes, even though I love seniors and they were just so fun to perform for. So we can mention briefly, but I'm not a real proselytizer about my religion. If somebody's interested, I say, here's a website, check it out for yourself, Scientology.org. I don't go, it's the only religion, it's the best. There are many religions that can help people. Scientology is a workable one. It's an applied religious philosophy. You learn something, you apply it to better your life and help others. But when I was going through a series of steps called the grades in Scientology, they deal with many of the immediate upsets a person has and the way they deal with others.
Mhm.
When I got through that process, I was feeling really good. And I told my counselor out of session, I told him, I said, gosh, I'd really like to help out. Maybe I should go into politics. So I looked at going into politics, and with the kind of money you have to raise, and also my age, but the kind of money you have to raise, I would have to do deals with the devil to
Mhm.
raise that kind of money. And I said, no, I don't want someone telling me what to say. And so I came up with this idea of writing a book. And I'm telling you, it was an amazing experience. I had never written a social political book before, although I'd written a children's book and a science fiction story, which now that I know you like Star Trek, I got to send you a copy of The Banished. You'll love this story.
Ah.
Anyway, so I started writing this book and I said, well, what do I want to have in it? And a lot of the chapters come from the social betterment groups that the church sponsors.
Mhm.
Stopping psychiatric abuse, getting kids away from drugs, bringing morals back into society, educating our students properly, and rehabilitating our criminals. And so though our prisoners and criminals. So those were the basic chapters. And then I also talked about my knowledge from a friend I have who knows this very strongly, the kinds of impacts on our society that the industrialists, the military industrial complex, and people like that, who I believe had a hand in removing Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, even Princess Diana from our world, because they stood for things that would change the path they want this world to go on. And so the book then became, yeah, I can sell some copies, but I'm more interested in getting the book out there. And people can get a hold of this book for free, or they can get an emailed copy because I have some copies available. Getting the information out there, educating, motivating, activating, bringing up to a need for change, and demanding improvement in our elected officials and this country and this world. And that is something I am extremely passionate about.
Well, I'm glad and thankful for your journey and your insight to yourself at overcoming all the obstacles that were in your personal life that allowed you to be opened up to see this and be able to write this book. Two concepts you say right off the bat is, one, the purpose of the book is to warn and educate the American people.
Yes.
And the second one is that the population represents the real owners of any country, and that you see them losing control of the ownership. And then you quote Thomas Paine in saying this, that the duty of a true patriot is to protect his country from its government. Now, we can both agree that where we stand today, this applies more than it ever has in any place that I've known in society. So how do you see that this is more appropriate now than it ever was?
Here's the reason. And if you just watch and listen to our elected officials, they're humans like the rest of us. They slip up. Now, let me share something with you. Not John McCain, the candidate who won against Obama, when he ran against Obama, he said something that I picked up on, and anyone can pick up on it. He said, yes, we found some cheating was going on in the Obama camp in the election, but our lawyers looked into it and we didn't find enough, so we dropped it. I'm sorry to say, my particular belief is he's lying. The reason he told his lawyers not to pursue it is that cheating in elections have gone on for decades. And he did not want us, Joe and Sally Q public, to find out that this cheating has been going on. So he said, whoa, lawyers, back off, because I want to use this the next time I get elected.
Right.
And this is why it's so important today, because in the previous years, it's been pretty hidden about the finagling with the elections. But in this recent presidential election, there are scores and scores and scores of people who have signed affidavits. They knew they would go to jail if they were lying, who said that this election was not ethical. And the people that are supposed to be looking into this to defend the Constitution and defend us have some sort of pressure on them, or they agree with Trump not being in office. They have refused to look into it. You know, our FBI used to be a bastion of something we could count on.
Right.
And they threw all these false accusations at Trump. And people can say, well, why was he so attacked? Well, first of all, they couldn't buy him off. They couldn't assassinate him. He was too popular, would have created such an investigation. They all would have been caught. And he was the one person going up against the criminality in Washington, and they did not want their crimes exposed. This is my personal belief, and many people also believe this. And so at this point, they are getting very, very open and very bold about just stealing election, putting the people they want in office to keep their power. And that is why it is more important than ever for Americans to realize everyone has some responsibility to the condition that this country is in. Now, in a few moments, before you start, in a few moments, I will actually give something people can do that doesn't cost them more than a postage stamp that they can do, because I would not get everybody riled up and then, you know, how can I fight against, you know, the industrialists who have billions of dollars? So I will give a way for them to start fighting back. Now,
Good.
Your turn.
Now, I want to clarify something, because throughout your book, and even today, you didn't use the words power elite, but you do understand that there is a power elite working behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
Now, what it looks like to us American citizens, just average Joe, is that all of a sudden we're seeing more and more, they're not afraid to show themselves that what right is wrong and what we know is wrong is now right. And they're silencing anybody who has a different opinion than they are. This cancel culture has hit the political realm in a big way. So I want to take the conspiracy theory out of this for a minute, Brian.
Sure.
I want to bring people to say, okay, it's not some spooky unknown people. And in your book, you define the power of elite. And I just want to go through what that is. So your definition from your book says it's an entity that's made up of the following organization, businesses, and groups: the international banking, the Federal Reserve, the International Monetary Fund, the Council of Foreign Relations, the military industrial complex, and then sections of the CIA, FDA, FEMA, FBI, and what most people don't know is the NIMH, which stands for the National Institute of the Mental Health.
Right.
You also have different parts of the United States Security Council, the international illegal drug trade, certain aspects of pharmaceutical companies worldwide, and other entities that work for the vested interests of the few and to negate the needs of many. So that's a whole list of bona fide, legitimate places, companies, groups of people that we can point to and say, yes, they are running our government. The elite power is not some spooky unknown people, you know, in black gowns. They're literal companies we all know about.
Now, here's the first thing people will say. They'll say, you just listed off thousands and thousands of people. I did not say everyone in the World Bank, everyone in the CIA is an antisocial personality.
No.
But an antisocial personality, I need to clear that up before we talk a little bit more about the power elite. The antisocial personality is an individual who lives under a psychosis of fear of anyone at all, every person. It's because, and here I need to do a split in the road. If you don't believe in reincarnation, that is fine. Something happened to an antisocial personality this lifetime where they were attacked, abused, criticized, and now they hate all people. If you believe in reincarnation, somewhere there in their existence, they were horribly treated. They were attacked, abused, hunted down, and their psychosis is they hate people. So regardless of what you believe, we have about 2.5% of the population that lives under a psychosis that you and I and everybody are looking for them. And they better push everybody down into the mud. You have to have a license to leave your house. You have a camera on your house 24/7. We know exactly where you are. Everybody's chipped. Everybody is monitored. Now, thankfully, we don't have that level of technology. But if they could get that technology, that's what they would do, because that's the psychosis they live under. And unfortunately, they get themselves in these groups that can do what? Can make life very tough for us. The CIA can make life tough for us. The World Bank can make life tough for us and emerging countries. And these are the individuals we're up against. Now, I am not saying that a person who's maybe even on, unemployment should say, okay, I got to take on the head of the World Bank. No, that's not what I'm saying. You just need to know the educational part. You need to know, okay, there are people that evil in this world. Put that on the shelf for a moment, because we've got to start where we live and broaden out from there. But the fact is, knowledge is power. Once you understand from the viewpoint of a police investigator, that's why conspiracy gets thrown out, because I look at things as a police investigator. Who would benefit? Who would benefit from global warming? Well, the people that are going to make money on the new environmental rules. Who would benefit from having more restrictive laws on our freedoms? The antisocial personality. It's not really a conspiracy theory. It's how do these people work? If I'm a police investigator, let me tell you right now, Melanie, that if Mrs. Jones had a $500 million life insurance policy, I don't care how philanthropic Mr. Jones is. He's on the list until we clear him, because he can gain from her death. You see, he might be innocent, but from a police inspector viewpoint, it opens up a whole panorama of people that you can look at. How would they gain? If Trump is exposing criminality in Washington, throwing every possible claim at him, true or not, who would gain from that? The other side, who doesn't. Let's bring it right down to home. You got Billy and you got Joe. Billy is older than Joe, and he's stealing cookies, and mom doesn't know. And the younger kid goes, I'm going to tell on you. And he goes, I'm going to beat the crap out of you if you tell, right?
Yes.
That is a microcosm of what happens when there's $500 trillion on the line.
Yes, that's true. And you know what? I do agree. We're not talking about everybody in those groups. No. I happen to know some FBI professionals, FBI agents. They're not part of that whole big scheme. We're not talking about the people who work within the companies necessarily. Right. We're just saying those organizations are part of that system that brings down the powers and the rules and the regulations. So we're not against anyone that works in those companies.
2.5% of every group. The CIA, the World Bank, your golf organization, your homeowners association, there will be 2.5% that are like, oh, I hate dealing with Sally or Bill. They're just like a pain in the backside. They never like anything. They're never happy. Yeah, now, I do have a quick homework assignment, real fast. You can go on YouTube, George Lucas's dissertation on the dark side and the light side. It's about 15 minutes long. I know it's science fiction, but when you watch what he says about the dark and the light side, how the dark side is never happy. They're always trying to get more stuff. They're always afraid of people stealing their stuff. On the good side or the light side, people are giving. They don't care about accumulating stuff, and they're not worried about it being stolen. I encourage people to watch that, because take it out of the science fiction and put it into our current situation. You'll go, oh my gosh, yeah, they just want to collect more power, and they're always worried, and they're never happy. And, so there we go. Homework assignment.
And that goes into your phrase that you love. Again, it's a Star Trek phrase, live long and prosper.
Yes,
Um, and most people
there we
that we're
go.
talking, I can't,
I can't do it with this hand, but I can
I
do it
can't
with
do it with
this
any
hand.
hand. It's not going to happen.
Yeah,
But most people that are listening to us today, and most people that are living just average day lives, that's all we want to do is live long, be healthy, and prosper in what we do and
right.
mind our own business. But for the sake of future generations, we need to be educated as we strive to live long and prosper.
Sure.
We need to understand what is going on in our governments and in our societies, because the future of our country is those coming up. And if we're not
Yes,
educated, how can
yes.
we educate them? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, students are the future of any society. That's why I am so mad about every time a student gets a little fidgety. Okay, give them some drugs. Make anybody who's bright, criticize them. Let's dumb down education. Because guess what? If I was evil, that's one of the first things I would attack is
Yes.
education. You get a bunch of dummies on pot. Yeah, man, whatever. Yeah, enact your bills, man, far out. There are these booklets that also I will send out free from Truth About Drugs. This is the campaign, drugfreeworld.org. You can go there yourself. They have booklets on everything: alcohol, inhalants, LSD, heroin, marijuana in Spanish and English. And this is a excellent tool against our young people being dumbed down. This does not tell you don't use marijuana. It says this is what it'll do if you use it. And if you get the book on heroin, this is what'll happen if you take it. And young people are very smart. They get a hold of these booklets, they'll go, that's what it does? What if I want a good job or want to have kids that don't have a missing limb or something because the drugs in me cause problems with the chromosomes or something,
In
And
your book,
so, yeah,
you talk about the young people,
yes,
how after the Vietnam War, or during the Vietnam War, it was the young people that were outraged enough to protest. It was the young people that was out there getting the truth of what was going on into society, into the news, into everybody's life. And so that, you say, actually dictated White House policy in ending the Vietnam War. And we see that just in 2020, how it was the young people that saw the racial injustice, that saw the political injustice, and they started all of these protests. I'm talking about the nonviolent ones, not the
yes,
violent ones,
yes,
but the peaceful protesting. They started communicating. They started doing conversations online and opening up Zoom meetings and just talking about, hey, do you see what's going on to our country?
mm-hmm.
And then we see, like you said, all of a sudden, what's being attacked? The education system.
Right.
Well, join me with this. Now, pre-COVID, I worked in the school district for a while, and I homeschooled my children and other kids. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you what, there was this one little girl. She in school, they told her, you need to go on Ritalin because you're out of control. You don't pay attention. You want to stand up. You don't want to, and they didn't discipline her. They just sent her to go give Ritalin. Now, there are people who actually have ADD or ADHD, but this drug Ritalin was given to kids, and I know this firsthand, just because they needed maybe some special guidance from the teacher. Maybe they needed to be challenged in their educational, so they were bored sitting there.
I'm
and
biting
they
my
weren't
tongue
being
because
challenged.
I'm biting my tongue because I'm letting you finish, but I'm going this. Okay, go
And
ahead.
then the other issue was they were malnutritioned, and so they didn't have all that they needed in their brains and their bodies to sustain them to be able to listen and learn. Some of them just needed glasses, but none of this was looked at. It was just get them Ritalin so they can dumb down, sit there, be quiet, and not be noticed. That was pre-COVID.
Right.
But now COVID, and I'm going to let you have the floor for a long time, but I got to get this out. Now they have shut down schools and stopped the education system altogether. Now, I'm going to tell you, I said I'm a homeschool mom, but you can't get these professionals, doctors, lawyers, people who have full-time jobs, administrative jobs. All of a sudden, they have to homeschool their children, and they think that they're going to do that. So the social skills are no longer being taught, curriculum not being taught, the arts, the sports are not being taught. But here's my problem, and I want to know where the outrage is, Brian, because the pro sports can go on, the entertainment world can go on, because they all have money, they all have power, so their lives go on. Where's the outrage? This is what I think. If people would stop watching the football and the pro sports and say, you know what, until you put your money to help open up our schools safely, we're not supporting your programs. Until we can have our jobs back and open up our economy, we're not supporting that you get to work. But nobody's willing to take that stand. Here's the floor. It's all yours.
So let's start with what I mentioned before, that, you know, there's a report that when Germany rolled into Poland, they took the kids away from the parents and they put the kids in pornographic movies because they were breaking down the society. Because if the kids and the parents had stayed together, that would have been a harder force for the Nazis to take over. So we take a look at today. We've got kids who want to look at a video screen, you know, 8 hours a day. So we've got an attack on the educational system. The pharmaceutical companies want to make money, so they have partnered with psychiatry. I'm not saying all pharmaceutical company employees or all psychiatrists are bad. What I'm saying is the evil ones have partnered together, and they are running tests on kids. Have you ever been depressed? Everybody gets depressed, but they're looking for more ways to sell their stuff. Now, you mentioned ADHD and all that as being factual. If people watching this program will go to cchr.org, the Citizen Commission on Human Rights has documented evidence that no one has ever done a proper test to find out the chemicals in someone's brain, and that ADHD was made up specifically to sell psychiatric medication. And the evil end of that is because they have terrible side effects.
Yes.
And that's just because probably the brightest kids are the one going, I am so bored with this class. Oh, man. You know, they're the ones we need to invent our solutions to our environmental problems and our energy problems. And what are we doing? We're polluting them because the powers that be want us to be on oil and gas forever. Now, let me go back to what you mentioned about Vietnam. The military-industrial complex wanted that war to go on for another 20 years. They didn't care about the loss of life of the Vietnamese people, and that war was not fought to free anybody. And the Gulf of Tonkin incident, that was the reason we justified for going after North Vietnam, came out later completely fabricated. And I feel sorry for those 40,000 men and women service people who went there in good faith. I still support them, but young people ended up with a march on Washington with 500,000 people. Finally, middle America said, okay, we've had enough of this. And you couldn't get elected if you didn't talk about how you were going to wind down the war. Young people were dictating White House policy. And guess what? The military industrial said, what are these darn hippies doing? Taking my money away. It ain't gonna happen. You know, Bell Helicopter making millions of dollars on all the helicopters getting blown up. Yeah, we'll send you 10 more helicopters, sure. You know. So at the end of end of Vietnam War, they said, okay, let's destroy the educational system. Let's talk about America being bad. Let's raise taxes obscenely high. Let's get everybody so busy that they can't think or question things. Because at the end of World War II, the country is doing pretty good. The fathers came back, had kids, the kids grew up, and they said, yeah, go to college, and it wasn't that expensive to go to college. Kids went to college and said, you want me to march off to that war? Wait a minute, I'm looking into this. There weren't very many drugs in our young people either. And Timothy Leary, who said everybody should drop out and turn on, came out as working with the CIA.
Oh, wow.
Horrible. So they basically did that as a way to, then they came up with the environmental movement. Okay, everybody's got to live a smaller lifestyle. Let's clamp it down, you know. And so since the end of Vietnam War, things have not been, and then they got rid of Kennedy. He was going to end the war. And Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King, you know, and then you wonder about Princess Diana. She was going to go to Norway and talk about ending these bombs, these, you know,
Right.
landmines, right?
Right.
They make a lot of money on selling those things. And no, she's not going to get a worldwide ban on something we make money on. And, you know, her death has never been fully investigated properly. I mean, for instance, the ambulance sat for 20 to 40 minutes before it went into the hospital. By orders by somebody to make sure she's dead? I don't know. You know, Sonny Bono was a congressman.
Right.
He found out through an FBI agent that a majority of our congressmen and senators were involved in the illegal drug trade. He said, I'm coming back. When the new session starts, I'm naming names.
And he never
The
made it.
claim was he hit a tree while skiing. His glasses weren't broken and he had blunt force trauma to the back of his head. Was he killed by somebody to shut him up? I don't have the facts. But as a police investigator, I certainly would have looked into it better than it has been looked into.
Well, we can't deny that there's a lot of questions that raises your eyebrows to say, wait a minute. There's a lot of, you know, you connect the dots and after a while you have a chain.
Who would
And
stand to gain from these incidents?
right. But let's go back a little bit because
Okay,
you
sure.
touched on something about how, you know, once the young people started getting their mind focused and saying, hey, wait a minute, we can think for ourselves, that the main goal is to kind of make society just numb and
It
just
is.
not care. And now we see that society, you know, pre-COVID, I have to talk about pre-COVID versus post-COVID because pre-COVID, there's a lot of social programs that are what people think are geared to help them get on their feet. There's a healthy debate about the people who could be working while receiving assistance. And that communication was always going on. Is it a good thing for public assistance? Should there be rules? There be regulations? And you say this in your book. It says, when one continually receives assistance with nothing paid in return, a person can start to feel degraded. Often, this feeling is almost unknown to the person receiving the free assistance. Okay, so then you say this, I want to continue on that. It says, the only way an individual ever feels a true sense of self-worth is when they can stand on their own and are able to take care of themselves and their family. I agree with that, you know,
True.
you give someone something for free, then their appreciation is not there. The value is not there. The self-esteem doesn't come with it. It actually does the opposite. It makes someone feel like, wait, what am I doing with my life? I'm doing absolutely nothing but taking. And not only that, the way the system is set up, you know, if you're a young unmarried woman and you've had a baby and you just got introduced to the system and you get public assistance, I think that's great if you need it. But here's the problem. Then you learn that the more kids you have, the more money you can have. So you have more kids so that you can get the bigger house, so that you can get free housing, so you can get more food. And it just goes on and on. So they entice you. It's almost like they pay you more to do nothing. And it's very difficult to get off of this system. So what do you suggest as a way of assistance with a repayment effort?
Sure. Before I go into that, just want to write down a note so I remember what you said there. Okay, so we have to go back to the antisocial personality. They want a society hooked to the feeding tube, who is so hooked to the feeding tube that they can't unplug it and find what crimes the person is doing. That's number one. Number two, whichever party is pushing free stuff, free stuff, free stuff, well, who are you going to vote for? Are you going to vote for somebody who makes you get off your rear end if you are lazy? I'm not saying all people on welfare are lazy, but if you are lazy, who are you going to vote for? And so they're thinking the viewpoint of the people giving free stuff. Hey, this will guarantee us votes, man. So to go on to welfare, I believe that a person should only be on welfare if they need it as a helping hand, and they must be in job training. And if they drop out of job training, they're going to get called in the office and say, look, you only have 6 more weeks, unless you get back into the job training and arrive on time for the classes. Then let's say a goodwill person says, yes, I'm sorry, I missed one, but I'm going to really do my job training because I want to get off welfare. Okay. Once the person is on welfare, I have come up with what I think is an awesome plan that benefits everybody and keeps everybody responsible. So Joe Smith or Mary Smith was on welfare. When she gets back on her feet, she would pay a small amount, not the entire amount she got while she was on welfare, but a small amount goes into a fund that if any senator or congressman, I don't care if there's $40 trillion in this fund eventually. If a senator or congressman says, hey, why don't we dip into some of that money into favors instead? Immediate ethics investigation, because that money is being put into that fund and invested wisely by the best investment people, the most ethical investment people we can find. And eventually from this program, you see, it benefits Mary Smith or John Smith because they know eventually none of their taxes will have to come out to pay for people on welfare, only to support the buildings and the employees who run the welfare program, because there will be so much money in there that money is there for Tom Jones or Betty Jones. The next person needs a hand, then they pay a little bit back in, it gets invested, the money keeps growing. And not only the people on welfare get help and job training or proper mental health care, but once they get back into the workforce and they have to pay a little money, they're not upset about that because they know, hey, yeah, I'm paying back, so I'm contributing, but eventually that fund is going to grow to the point where none of my taxes will be taken to help the next person up. Now, that is a very wide and broad responsibility level. You cannot legislate responsibility, but I think most people are good-hearted and good-willed, and they'd go, that is a good program. Guess who's going to fight against it? The people that want people to be on the dole and to vote for them, and the antisocial personalities who don't want people running on all cylinders.
I like that plan. I absolutely love the effect of paying it forward. And we've seen over society that people love a pay it forward kind of plan. They love to know that, hey, I'm gaining something, but I'm going to be able to give back. And that's a plan people will get behind. Right. Now, the one group of people, as you were discussing, I think is left out of that are those that are on social programs because of sickness or disease, infirmities, right, and they can't work. But here's what I think about that. And I've used this with other people in my life that I know have been on disability or programs because of the inability to go to a job and work, up to those standards. Right. And this is that, okay, if you're too sick, you're unable physically to go and work a job that has that structure, then your livelihood is getting paid, but volunteer. If you can do a volunteer, if you're sick, volunteer at a hospital or a school or a church. You need to have a requirement to utilize some of your time as it works within your disability, yes, to volunteer and make the community better. And I think that's what it's missing, because then you have self-pride. Then you're not just at home getting depressed because you're sick and you're unable. We're encouraged, and I've done this with people over the years, and I've seen people who were depressed about their illness and their sickness become alive and No, they don't get off the social welfare program because they physically can't, but they are giving back, and that's worth more to them than anything. So I think your plan plus my plan together is a really good plan.
I agree with that. Now, I wrote down some notes here. If we really taught nutrition to our young people in school, I mean, really got them up to speed on nutrition, which of course, pharmaceutical companies and psychiatrists don't like it because they don't make money on vitamin C or any of the other vitamins. But that is something that would start to unwind us from this situation. It might take a generation, but imagine our kids who really know nutrition. There's going to be less illness. They're not going to smoke. They're probably not going to take drugs. If we have less psychiatrists in every school, there's going to be less kids on psychiatric medications that have horrible side effects.
That's true.
Now, the other thing is doctors will say that a high percentage of illness is caused by psychosomatic ills.
No.
Caused by the mind. If you were in the military and got blown up, you hear a car backfire, it causes some upset. It's only the similarity in the two things that are causing you to get upset. It is not the car backfire. It is 10 years ago, the explosion. Now, I always take the stand that people should look into information I suggest, make up their own mind. But Dianetics is called the modern science of mental health. I'm telling you right now, from being involved with Dianetics since 1979, if you don't have an owner's manual of the human mind, how are you finding your way through life? But again, I only say go to the library or buy the book and read it and check it out for yourself. But there are case examples in there where individuals had a psychosomatic illness caused by an earlier upset or injury. Through Dianetics counseling, they addressed that, and guess what? The malady went away. It is not saying that Dianetics offers health guidance. What it is, if it's a psychosomatic ill, it can be addressed in any way you figure, but Dianetics is a workable way. And going back to what you said, if someone is on disability, honestly, I love what you said. You can still stuff envelopes for a government printing office, or you can still man a table maybe a few hours a week for Red Cross or something. And let me tell you, this is one statement I want your viewers to hear. I have all these problems, my life, my relationships. You put your attention on another group or someone else.
That's right.
Suddenly those problems are not as big because people want a game. Who would play a football game if you knew the outcome? Who would be interested in your life if it's going to be the same thing every day? So I guess I'll invent an illness because now I got a game. I got to go to the doctor. And I'm not saying I don't have empathy for people who are ill, but I'm saying that sometimes people will invent trouble just to have a game, just to have barriers to, you see, because we all want to have a game.
Now, I want to interject a little bit. You know, I just want to testify, and maybe that's, to the fact that, you know, yes, there are, I think health is damaged now by our nutrition. Right. We think the food is actually feeding us anything, and it's not. We have to, you know, we have to educate people about the processed foods, about the sugar, the salt, about, you know, the fact that you need vitamin B and magnesium, and, you know, everybody's got headaches and migraines. Well, you probably don't have any magnesium in your body. We do need to educate people on what you need to eat and the vitamins. The psychosomatic, let me tell you, and I haven't shared this with many people, but I had 9 miscarriages. All right, Brian, in 10 years, my husband and I did. And we couldn't figure it out. And I had this one doctor, he was my last miscarriage doctor. He actually is the one, Dr. Ellington, that delivered my first live baby girl. And he looked at me, I was about to miscarry. I just miscarried my 9th child. And he looked at me and said, "What is it about you? What's in your past? that is making your body just abort these children, because there's nothing medically going on that's going to do this 9 times. There's something that's going on in here.
Mhm.
And I had a situation as a younger person that related to that. It was a horrible one. I thought I got past it. I thought it was over and done years and years and years ago.
Sure.
And like 20 years before this. And there I was like, wow. He said, you deal with that, you'll have babies. And I thought it just can't be, but I did. I dealt with that. I had to face it. I had to deal with it, realize that it was holding, my body was holding it in.
Yeah.
And every time I got to a certain point in my pregnancy, boom, it was too real. The pain was too real. I didn't even know it. And so we do need to look at, and it didn't take drugs. It didn't take going into any kind of long-term therapy. It just was a matter of understanding and then releasing it, you know? And so that is powerful. And we do need to teach that. We need to be able to say to people, what's going on? Having a mental issue is not a negative. It's if you accept that, yes. And I like what you said early on, everybody has a life. Everybody's had hurt and pain. But if we just shove it under the table, it's always going to revisit. It's always going to present. And even the Bible, talks about how, unforgiveness and hardship, all of that will cause sickness on your body. It's just a fact. So
it is.
But let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Post COVID, the majority of the people, because the government has stopped people from working, taken away businesses, fined people for working if they work through it so much that they can't afford their companies. Now, people are saying, give us money, give us a stimulus package. Come on, bail us out, give us relief. Are we now more accepting and willing to rely on the government? And is this a slow change from personal dependence to socialistic dependence?
What it is, I believe, again, looking at this as a police investigator, I am very suspicious with the country doing better than it ever had before. The lowest Black, Asian, and Hispanic unemployment ever. Suddenly COVID hits. I'm just very suspicious that it was a planned operation. I'm not saying there isn't an illness out there that we have to be careful of. What I'm saying is, I think they're saying it's more contagious than it is. I have heard that hospitals get money if a patient is listed as a COVID patient rather than he died of pneumonia. So there's a money issue there. And I think that since the Federal Reserve is in charge of our money, and it probably has been doing criminal acts ever since they were started in 1920s, that money is owed to us anyway. And that's why I'm not so concerned about us getting that money. I don't like to see the country go into debt, but I believe if the Fed was investigated and audited, we would find criminality and we would get a rebate, and that money should come to the people anyway. So in that particular case, I don't look at it as welfare. I look at it as justice, because I think that the COVID crisis was created to further destroy the country. And people like Bill Gates have openly said, we should have a population of 300 million on this planet. That is killing 6 billion people. My gosh. It makes Hitler look like an amateur. And I don't mean to say that with any disrespect for the people that he had killed. But to talk about the planet having 300 million people openly, okay, then as a police investigator, I'm suspicious about the timing of when COVID came out and the extension. They're saying now we won't be through with it until 2022.
Right.
We're going to be so far in debt, it's going to be horrible, because what if people's unemployment runs out in March and we're going to be under COVID until 22? What are they supposed to do? Start, digging up roots and eating them in their backyard or something to survive?
Yeah,
I,
I agree with you. There is a real disease. There is a real virus that is
yeah,
causing people to get sick and killing some others. I myself have lost 11 people that I
I'm so sorry to
deeply
hear
cared
that.
about through COVID. My sister is actually part of the whole New York nursing home issue.
Okay.
She contracted it in a nursing home. She was there temporarily for rehab, and she never got out. Um, and so that hits home. But there is an aspect of don't waste an opportunity. They seized the moment and made it into a crisis that now is conditioning us. I do agree um, that we earn the right to have this. Listen, we pay taxes all the time. If the government's telling us we can't work, well, then they need to fund us because we're not working because we don't want to. It's because they demanded that we don't.
Exactly.
However, I also think, Brian, that it is conditioning the American people to say it's okay to not work if the government just pays your bills.
Right.
I think it's a slow conditioning of a change of
Of course.
mentality for us.
Manipulation is another word.
Yes, yes. And I just, people can just wake up and say, you know what? My daughter, she's 22,
Mhm.
and she came home and she said, people are saying, oh, I'm just waiting for my stimulus check. I'm waiting for them to pass another stimulus bill or relief bill, and they're not doing anything with their lives. She's like, why are they not doing something? Why are they not going back to school, getting more education? Why they don't? There's so many opportunities. And if you're listening, find out what's inside of you, your passion that you never had time to do because you were holding down a 10 to 12-hour a day job. This is the time while you're mandated not to work. This is a time to find out what's inside of you and put effort into it. Go back to school, start writing those books that you have inside of
Mhm.
you.
Mhm.
Start doing those businesses that you wanted and always thought you would, but you never had the time. This is the time people can enlarge their territory instead of sitting around waiting for the government to say, let me work.
Right.
Um, and then the last aspect, I know I'm going to give it to you before we switch over to the
Mhm.
last aspect that I really want to bring out of your book before we leave, and that is freedom. What does freedom and liberty really mean? But I'll let you talk more if you have anything else on the social aspect.
Just a couple of things that antisocial personalities are like this. They are so psychotically afraid of people that they have the blinders on, really. And they made a mistake with young people that caused the Vietnam War to end sooner. They made a mistake about the internet. It's a way for us to communicate. Of course, now they're trying to censor us on that. But you see, they're making that same mistake again because I believe, and I write about this in my book, there's a magic in this country. You can come here without a cent and you can come up with let's say COVID wasn't happening. You could come up with a new ism or a thing and you could start marketing. And if people want it, you could have a nice house and a great life and, and you've got freedoms and you could start a paper and say what you want to say. So they're making that mistake again. They are paying people to stay home. And I think your words are going to echo more than people know. People are going to go, yeah, I do have this period of time. I'm going to sit down and write down what is it that is my passion. And let me tell you, they're going to get their butts kicked. And right now, I better say that those people who say, how can I fight the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds? You can start with what I put in my book, rename the politicians. Whenever you write to them, email them, whenever you send them a text, send them a written letter, you call them by what their new name should be, and that is public servant. And you don't have to be ugly. You just say public servant, state senator. By the way, I just wanted to say, I want you to vote this way on this bill. I think it's important. And after all, you're I'm your boss.
Yep.
And you're supposed to be working for us. Now, here's the litmus test. And a litmus test is when you put the water in the pool and see how much chemicals you need to put in. The way I'm using this word litmus test is you will now pull back the charade of the politician when you call them a public servant and they go, "How dare you talk to me in such a demeaning manner?" No, I'm not talking to you in a demeaning manner. I'm reminding you who you work for. Well, I'm just not going to talk to you anymore. Okay. You just found out that that particular senator probably is working for somebody else. So guess what? Do not re-elect them. Run this test on the people that are governing you and see how they respond to it. Because a good-hearted person will say, yeah, you are my boss and I am doing for you the best that I can. And then you want to re-elect that person, and we want to re-elect more people like that. And we got to pull the money out of politics. It should not cost $50 million to be a U.S. senator. Because guess what? Do you have $50 million?
No,
do I have $50 million? Okay.
That keeps the elite in power because they're the only ones who can afford to get in power.
Well, they're going to do a deal with the devil, and they're going to say, Mr. Corporation, I need money. Okay, here's your money to run. But by the way,
remember me,
to vote this way and that way. And when you come to their office, they say, oh, it's so great to see the public come to my office. I love input. Thank you. And you want me to vote how on that bridge? Okay, great. And they pick up the red phone and they go, supporter, how do you want me to vote on the red phone? Okay, we have arrived at a point again where we have taxation without proper representation, and that is tyranny. And that is not liberty, and that is not freedom, and it must not be allowed to continue.
I agree, but let's tell the people what freedom is, all right? Because that's
freedom
a great segue.
Freedom is the ability to do what the Constitution says. You live a life for your happiness and doing the things that you want to do within the logical laws. You don't go into a theater and say, I have freedom of speech, there's a fire. That's irresponsible. You act responsibly, but you get to make your own choices about what you want to do. Look, I don't agree with X, but I will fight for my right for people to do X because it's not breaking a law. They should be able to do it. That is what freedom is. Liberty, you can look it up in a dictionary. I agree. I mean, I encourage you to do so, but liberty pretty much is non-intrusion by a government entity. You know, we don't have Washington telling us, here's what you have to do. You know, some government regulation. You can't, you know, why should you have to pay more for the registration of your car because you've worked hard and you got a car that is new, has better brakes than the old beater that only gets charged a tiny amount for? I feel like it should be the reverse. If your car is breaking down and the brakes are failing, well, then you're going to pay, and you're leaking oil on the roads and destroying the roads, you should pay more for your registration. And maybe there could be a law to have a big yellow sticker on your car that you get your brakes checked more regularly and you get a break on your registration. I want to invest in those who are being productive and ethical.
Yes, I do agree. Those who are actually doing things that are bettering and being responsible should get the breaks, not the other way around.
While we educate and help those that maybe have a blind spot or two. It's not that they're wrong. Let's get you educated on this and show you some other alternatives. And if we start in our schools, we will develop a generation that is so ethical and so honest. Because here's an important thing I want to say. Every species reaches a point where they have to take their next evolutionary step or they perish. The dinosaurs couldn't say, hey, Harold, we should invent a heater, you know, because it's kind of cold right now with that meteor. You know, so our next evolutionary step is ethics. Because when a guy is going to pour crap in the river and it's midnight, he has to tell his employees, no, I know we could save $50,000. We're not doing it because it's wrong. You can't have cameras everywhere on everybody at all times. In each of us has to be a high ethical level, and then we will not blow ourselves up. We will not pollute ourselves to death. That is our next evolutionary step. Guess who's against it? The antisocial personalities. Because if everything is okay and nothing is wrong, how can you find out about their crimes? So everything is okay to do, Under
Well,
that scenario, you can't find their crimes because everything's okay.
that is very true. That's very true. And, we could talk forever, I think. I think we can go on and on, but our time is up. But one thing I want to emphasize that you say at the end of your book is change is possible. One person can make a significant change in society. And you give an example of Rosa Parks, and we all know how she made it. One person, she sat on a bus where she wasn't supposed to, and it changed society. It was a catalyst. And it's not going to be easy to be that catalyst, to be that catalyst. But if we really believe that we see our government, our society, our next generation not being cared for, not being responsible, we need to step up and take action. So,
yeah. Do we care about, do we care about our children and our grandchildren, the kind of world they're going to live in? And let me tell you real fast, I'll make this real fast. I went to the Ford Museum. I sat in the bus.
I read that in your book.
Yeah. They found the bus in a field and they reconditioned it. Guess what? It blew me away. She was in the black section, and this creep comes to the black section. I mean, I thought tiny one atom of justification if she's in the white section, even though I don't agree with it.
Right.
He comes back there and and she changed the world by saying, you know what? Go ahead, arrest me. I'm not getting up. I've been working all day. I'm tired. She changed the world, and everyone can make a difference in this world.
You have three words: educate, motivate, and activate.
Right.
And we need that activation.
It's gonna get me in the most trouble of any words in my book. Bring it on. Go ahead.
To activate people to work to see real changes and improvements in this country and in the world. Brian, I love how we provoked each other throughout this conversation.
So I just get excited,
and I think we could just keep going, but maybe another day.
Can I say one more thing? Just one more thing.
May.
Two things. People may not agree with,
but I picked up your book and you gave me the email version, electronic version. Yes. And I'm going to tell you what, I read it in one sitting. I just, I had to just keep going and keep going and keep going. And I showed my daughter my notes, for the interview. And she said, can I get a copy of the book? I haven't even heard the interview, but just based on your notes, I want the book. So it is contagious. I'm excited to tell people how to get the book. Because like you said, you have other topics. Renaming our politician is one, the Federal Reserve, global warming, the prison system. You talk about the psychiatry and our students. You talk about, I love this. I just have to mention this. Community emergency response team. Touch on that, because I think that is an outstanding program.
Let me tell you, I have gone through the program 3 times, a couple of times in Northern California and once here in Henderson. You can go to any fire department. They will have, I think it's probably somewhat interrupted with COVID, but check with them anyway. But it's called Community Emergency Response Teams. You go there and you have 6 days of training once a week. They tell you how to work fire extinguishers, how to help people that are injured, how to deal with emergencies, especially earthquakes and floods. It is the most fun training you'll do. Now, I know what people are going to do. They're going to get 3 or 4 of their women or men friends. They all go together. Guess the trick they pull on you. Everybody's sitting with their friends and they go, okay, count off numbers. And guess what? You do not get to hang with your friends. You are with new people in a contrived scenario where you have to save somebody. And you have to then, because that's what's going to happen in an earthquake. Your friends probably aren't going to be with you. You're going to be with a Sally you never met, and we got to help this person in this house where it's fallen down. It is the most fun I have ever had. I can't suggest it enough. and you get a backpack. It costs
Oh,
you
wow.
very minimal amount of money to take the 6-week course. You get a backpack full of equipment. I have 2 backpacks in my vehicle at all times. And I feel like if there's an accident, which there are many accidents in Las Vegas where the police and fire and emergency people aren't there yet, I could really help somebody. And you can't get in trouble when you're cert if you only go to a certain point. You are protected. You'll read about that in the opening class of the CERT training. But I'm telling you, everybody who's watching this should, as soon as they can, go through the training. You feel very empowered.
And you have a chapter called Personal Responsibility, and it really talks about the difference between having sympathy for someone and empowering someone. I urge you all listening, get a book for your friends, your families. Make this like your last minute gift, your purposeful gift, your holiday gift.
Yeah.
This book will cause people to think and change their lives. It's going to be on the screen.
You can email me, because I don't care if my email's out there. It's Gardner 2323 at yahoo.com. I do have some comp books, but if you can accept an emailed copy, that saves me the postage, which I will pay, and it'll save me giving a book. But if you need a hard copy book and you want one, just let me know. And you will also get some drug booklets. I will send this and then a link how to get that. A copy of my environmental report, Global Warming is a False Threat based on faulty science. It's based on facts, co-written with a person who really knows this material. And you'll get this report as well. And I encourage you to make up your own mind about the information in here and in here and in here. And in Dianetics, if you happen to pick up Dianetics, read it, make up your own mind about it. Do not read, count on the news reports to tell us who's good or bad. They're going to filter that for ratings. Make up your own mind about these issues. That is another level of empowerment.
Well, I hope you all get that. I hope you get the book. I hope you look on the screen, write it down, screenshot it right now. But if you love Ryan so much and you're just like, I just want to hear him talk more and more and more, well, he has a new program called We Have the Power, and it's on social media's network. There's a link on your screen as well for that. So
every Friday night, 7 p.m. Pacific Coast time.
Say that time again, Brian.
Let me say it slower this time. 7 p.m. This is why I don't drink regular coffee, okay? 7 p.m. Pacific Coast time every Friday.
All right. And follow the link. It's social media shows network.com. Look for his show, We Have the Power. Right. Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. And to those who listen, thank you so much for joining us. And don't forget, here is our weekly Daily Dose schedule coming up.